Hello everyone, my name is Keely. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back if you've been here before. Today I'm going to be doing my wrap up for Buzzwordathon for 2022. If you haven't heard of Buzzwordathon, it is a year-long reading challenge from Kayla from Books and Lala. She puts this all together and it is all about reading your buzzwords. So each month there is a prompt for a buzzword and you're supposed to pick a book with that buzzword in the title. How many times can I say buzzword in one video? We'll find out. But this was so much fun to do all year long. I picked up some books that I probably wouldn't have got to as soon as I did if it were not for this challenge, and I feel like I had a pretty successful time with this challenge. There were so many books that are my favorites of the year and I'm so thankful that I got to them. It was just also fun to have a year-long challenge to do. So if you haven't checked it out, Kayla has already posted the one for 2023, so hopefully you can participate in that one as well. But let's get on into it. So starting off with January, the buzzword was who, what, when, where, why, or how. So I went with How We Fall Apart by Katie Zhao. So this book is actually filled with a lot of drama and it takes place in a preparatory school, and we follow a group of characters, and one day when they are at a school assembly, their ex-best friend, the most perfect junior, the most perfect classmate, is found missing and later found dead, and her ex-group of best friends are all kind of being suspicious about it and they are being blamed for it because their ex-best friend knew all of their deepest, darkest secrets, and now they are worried that their secrets are going to get out or make them look even more suspicious. So this gave me kind of like Gossip Girl vibes, but it also is compared to Crazy Rich Asians and One of Us is Lying. So you have like the thrilling, mysterious aspects, but also the darkness of all of the secrets, and if one of these high schoolers turned against their ex-best friend. So I really did not expect to like this one because it was filled with unlikable characters, but there was just something. Like I said, I compared it to Gossip Girl because there's just something about these unlikable characters that I want to find out what happened, and because the main girl that died was unlikable, I didn't feel sorry for her. And so I wanted to know why somebody killed her because it felt justified. That sounds so bad. That sounds really, really bad. But you know, if you read a murder mystery book and it's an unlikable character and you're like, okay, so somebody murdered her because she's unlikable, so let's find out why. And this was exactly that. It was so much fun to read and it was also a very quick read, and I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. So next we have February, and the buzzword for this month was pronouns. So I went with Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hillier. And this is a thriller book. So we follow Paris Peralta, and in the opening of the book, she is found standing over the body, the very bloody body of her famous husband with a razor in her hand. And it looks like she did it, and she didn't do it, but she is so worried that because of this, her past will come back to haunt her. And on the other side of that, we also follow a convicted killer called the Ice Queen. Her name is Ruby, and Ruby knows exactly who Paris is. So it was really interesting because we do follow these two perspectives, one where Paris is trying to hide her identity, and another where Ruby knows exactly who Paris is and if she's going to come out with that information. Also, you have the fact that Paris's husband was murdered, and so you're trying to find out why and what happened, and because he was such a high celebrity, why would Paris, who wants to hide her identity, marry such a high-profile person? I thought this was really interesting. I really liked the dual perspective you get, and the fact that there were so many mysteries made it even more thrilling and fast-paced. This was my first time reading from this author, and I have heard really great things about Jennifer Hillier, so I definitely want to pick up more from her, but I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars as well. So in March, the Buzzwordathon prompt was location. So I went with Tokyo Ever After by Amiko Jean, and this synopsis is really easy to tell you because it is essentially The Princess Diaries meets Japan. So this is all about Japanese royalty, and we follow a high schooler named Izumi, and she has always grown up with her mother, and one day Izumi finds out her father is actually the crown prince of Japan, and she really wants to meet him. Princess Diaries ensues. There's a bodyguard romance in this. This first book was so much fun, and I loved being in the setting of Japan. Japan is such a cool country, and I just love reading anything about it. I also love anything with royalty, and I have found that the bodyguard trope is so much fun to read, and it was just really great to see someone like Izumi try to fit in with royalty and figure out that there is so much that comes along with it. I thought it was really fun, and I also gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. Now in April, the prompt was little or big, so I went with The Little Prince, which is a classic I had never read, and I was fully prepared to make this book my entire personality, but unfortunately it fell a little short for me. So we basically follow this little prince, and I think he is from a different planet and he comes down to Earth or something, and then he has this big adventure. I don't really know. I have already forgotten about it, but the illustrations were a lot of fun and there were some great quotes in this. So overall, I don't regret reading it, but it's not something super memorable to me, but I did give it 3 out of 5 stars overall. So in May, the prompt was direction, so I went with Come Tumbling Down by Sean and McGuire, and this is book 5 in the Wayward Children series. So this book in particular follows the characters Jack and Jill, and we go back to the moors. And unfortunately, this was not a great book for me in this series or for Buzzwordathon. So Jack and Jill are probably my least favorite characters in this series. I just think they're both so dislikable and they are so selfish and narcissistic, and I just don't really like following from them because they expect people to help them without doing something kind to them or being even good friends to them. I also don't particularly like the location of the moors, and I don't really know why, because it sounds like it would be the perfect setting for me and something that I would love to read, but both times I have read about the moors, I just have not enjoyed it. So overall, I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars. So in June, the prompt was all in the title, so I went with All of Us Villains by Christine Lynn Herman and Amanda Foody. So if you've spent any time on this channel, you will know that I absolutely love this book so much, and I'm really thankful that Buzzwordathon had me pick up this book because I really struggled with this prompt for a little bit, and then I found this one and it was perfect. So this is a fantasy book, and we are set in a kingdom called Ilvernath. And in Ilvernath, every 20 years, there is a deadly tournament where 7 families compete. They each send 1 champion into this tournament, and they have to fight to the death. And the last one left alive gets the high magic for the next 20 years. So we follow these different characters, we have different points of views in this book, and it is such a fascinating magic system. And the tournament, of course, is so much fun as well. Who doesn't love a deadly competition? But yes, I really loved all the characters' voices in this. I thought they were all very unique and different. It was such a quick read, not to mention short chapters. So yes, I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. And also the magic system, I just really love it. It's one of my favorites. So for July, we were supposed to find a book with a book-related word in the title, so I went with Storybound by Emily McKay. So we follow our main character who is completely obsessed with this famous book series, and the last thing she expects is to be transported to this famous book series, and she has to try to figure out how to save her book boyfriend. Now, this plot just seems like every book lover's dream, but unfortunately it felt flat. So this book really read like a contemporary author was trying to write a fantasy story and just didn't execute the fantasy parts very well. I will say it read very quickly, but it also read very young. And so it was a fun story, but nothing to write home about, so I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. So in August, the prompt was item or object, and I went with 3 Dark Crowns by Kendara Blake, and this is book 1 in this series. So this is a young adult fantasy series, and in this kingdom, there is always a set of triplets that are to be a queen. But the catch is that these 3 triplets grow up in different parts of the kingdom where they specialize in different types of magic, and they have to come together on their 16th birthday and fight to the death because there can only be 1 queen. So we follow, like I said, 3 different girls, and they all have different magic. So we have a naturalist, we have an elementalist, and then we have a poisoner. Now the naturalist is my favorite because they get animal familiars, and it's just so much fun. Like, some people have dogs, some people have crows, some people have cougars, like, or a mountain cat, all that stuff. It's really cool, and I really loved to see the different types of magic system. And the poisoners are actually immune to poison, so they eat poison just for fun. All of their food has to be poisoned in some way. And then the elementalist can control all the elements like rain, fire, water, earth, wind, all that stuff. I really loved that there were 3 different unique characters and they all had a different magic system. I loved this world, and of course that there was supposed to be a deadly competition and we were leading up to that. The chapters in this book are also very short, and we get to see all the different parts of the kingdom, and it was really cool because they were all so different and unique. There's one aspect in this book that I did not like, and that is because of the character Joseph. I absolutely hated Joseph because he made some not great decisions in my part, but overall I really loved all the characters and the magic and the world, and it made me so excited to continue with the series, and I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. So September was light or dark, so I went with A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Brigid Kemmerer, another book I had owned for so long, and this is yet another YA fantasy. I had so much love for YA fantasy this year, which is funny because I am not a fantasy girly, but this year made me realize YA is where it's at. So this is actually a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and we follow a girl named Harper, and Harper lives in Washington, D.C., and one day she sees this man and he seems to be abducting a girl that is inebriated and cannot handle herself. So Harper actually goes after this man, and she gets transported to a fantasy kingdom where she actually has to help save the kingdom from this monster, and she meets a prince there, and she is not happy because she was transported against her will. Harper also has cerebral palsy, so a lot of people look at her as weak, and she wants to show them that she is anything but weak. So the 3 characters that we see the most in this book are Harper, Wren, and Gray, and Wren is the prince and Gray is the prince's guard, and I just absolutely loved all these characters so much. I loved how strong and independent Harper was, and I loved Wren. He is very troubled, but I really loved him. And then Gray is the brooding guard that reminds me a lot of Kale from Throne of Glass. I had so much fun reading this. I really loved the fantasy world that it was set in, and kind of the Beauty and the Beast retelling was also really fun to find out more about the monster and how and why it occurs. I had so much fun reading this, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. So October was for animal or creature, so I went with The Wolves Are Watching by Natalie Lund. And we follow a high schooler named Luce, and one night she sees a pair of yellow eyes looking at her in her backyard, and that same night her little cousin Madison goes missing. And so Luce is trying to figure out what these eyes mean and Madison's disappearance and see if there's a correlation. And as she is trying to look into this and find Madison, she realizes that there is quite a string of missing girls in this town every few years, every few decades, and this leads to a mythological creature about shape-shifting women that steal children every few decades. So the fact that this had lore and mythology in it was really, really fun, and it was something that I had never heard of before, and it was really cool to learn more about that lore and mythology. I also liked how there was kind of a mystery aspect because you did have this string of missing children, and Madison is also missing and we don't know what's happening to her, and Luce has that strong connection because it is her little cousin, and she is trying to figure out and do anything she can to find her cousin and solve this mystery. So there was just something magical and whimsical about this book that I just really connected with and really loved. It's one of those books that I fell completely in love with, and I just don't know why. I just had that feeling with it, so I ended up giving it 5 out of 5 stars. So the prompt for November was to read a book with ING in the title, so I went with Hunting Prince Dracula by Carrie Maniscalco, and this is book 2 in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series, but this takes place in a completely different place than the first book did. So in the first book, we meet characters Audrey Rose and Thomas Cresswell, and this is set in the 1800s, and they are very fascinated with forensics and science and autopsies. So this book in particular takes place in Romania, and they are going to a forensic school, but of course murders start happening and they are kind of vampiric in nature. So the setting of the school really, really did it for me. It was set in an old castle in Romania in December, so it is incredibly snowy, and there is also a small village down the path through the woods, and it just reminded me so much of Harry Potter and the Hogwarts castle. In this book, they also have to go through several secret chambers, which also reminds me of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. But the way the castle and the chambers and everything was just described was so atmospheric, and it was just the perfect thing that I wanted and everything to me. So in the first book, like I said, we meet Thomas Cresswell, and he is forming this relationship with Audrey Rose. And I was not completely sold on Thomas and the relationship, but in this book, I fell completely in love with Thomas, and I really, really loved their relationship. He showed more of his emotions in this book, which I really love because he's also a very analytical character, but I just loved this book so much, even more than Stalking Jack the Ripper, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And finally, for December, we had to read a book with number in the title, and I went with One Dark Throne by Kendara Blake, and this is book 2 in the Three Dark Crowns series. And this one I didn't enjoy as much as the first one. This one is a lot longer, and I just felt like it didn't need to be that long. It felt slower to me for that reason, but I still really loved the characters, and I actually did come to like Joseph in the end, which was really surprising because I hated him so much in the first book. But this was interesting because you get to see so much more of the magic, which was one of my favorite aspects of the series, and I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. So those are all the books that I read for Buzzwordathon this year. Let me know if you participated, and if you made it this far in the video, go ahead and leave the B emoji. But that is it. Thank you so much for watching. As always, all my social media links will be down below, and I will see you next time. Bye!